On this episode of the Awaken Podcast, we're going to explore how you can overcome negative thinking, blaming, judging, complaining, and dwelling on what's wrong. We're going to look at the very core of what contributes to staying in a rut and maintaining a negative mindset versus what will get you out of it and tapped into your inspiration and joy so that you can live the most fulfilling life possible. This is going to be a really honest, raw conversation, and we really hope that it will inspire you and invite you into some deeper reflection so that you can go out into the world and live more aligned. Welcome to the Awaken Podcast,
where we share practical spirituality for modern living.
Join us as we dive deep into conversations about healing and transformation.
Let's go. Here we are.
Here we are.
Another episode.
Ready to dive in. Let's take a moment, take a breath together. If you're tuning in and want to join us, let's
go.
Breathe. Tuning into our intention for this conversation.
My intention for today's conversation is for both of us to access a higher source of energy and bring through a transmission of healing, hope, and inspiration for the highest good of all.
Cheers to that.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for it too. I hope that this conversation will feel challenging and maybe a little confronting, but in a way that's like, yeah, I want that. And I know that this is inviting me into my next level.
Let's go. So if
I'm
you're
here
watching
for
at home
myself too, let's go. I'm
and
ready to learn.
You want to join us with
grow.
a cacao?
Yes.
Let's get it.
Cacao, matcha, a little coffee, whatever you got going on, maybe a little herbal tea.
That's
Cheers.
so good. So this morning, I woke up feeling negative. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I didn't know why I was feeling like that. And often with stress, there can be this compound effect where things happen in life and we feel okay, and then life keeps coming at you, and then all of a sudden,
pound, another pound.
And before we know it, we've moved beyond our window of tolerance.
Yeah.
And we feel down, we feel dysregulated, we feel negative within ourselves. And that was me this morning. So I sat down.
Started to go into that victim mindset.
Yeah, I started to just notice how I was feeling like life wasn't working out, and I felt burdened and weighed down. And I was also reflecting on all of the challenges that our clients are going through. And it made me real emotional because there's so many people out there that are genuinely really struggling.
Really struggling.
And, you know, we work in the field of supporting people every single day. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And we all have our own tools to work through these things. But from time to time, you start to feel that weight on your shoulders.
Absolutely.
And that was me this morning. So I started crying and just moving through it. And you know what? After that, I felt so much lighter and I'm reconnected to joy. But I know if I hadn't allowed myself to go there, then I would have stayed in that funk. I would have had that negative mindset and it would have spilled out onto other areas of our life, including our relationship. And it's the weekend, baby. We want to have a good weekend, you know?
We do. We are working on the weekend and we have no time for that extra baggage and low vibe.
No, because one of the things that I've noticed...
we've got to make space for it.
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed is that when I'm in that mind state of maybe feeling like a victim or life isn't working out or I'm focused on what's going wrong, my viewpoint is so narrow. I can only see what's wrong. It stops me from being able to fully connect and appreciate all of my blessings, all of the good things going on in my life. And it takes me out of the present moment. And not only am I only focused on what's wrong and not appreciating the present moment, I became a part of the problem. But if I'm a part of the problem, then I can be a part of the solution. And we have the tools to work through these things and shift our mindset. So let's dive into this.
Yeah, that is a really great place for us to start. Thank you for the realness. And bringing it here, I think it's so important for people to know that you and I do go through hard times and we fall into our own little holes of negativity and complaining and feeling like a victim, and no one is exempt. The question is how long you stay there and whether you let it dictate how you show up in the world, or if you're going to transform it into something of value for you. That's where I think we excel and have a lot to offer people, because yeah, we do go through hard times and then we pull ourselves out, we work the tools, we learn, we grow, and here we are, feeling light and inspired again. So with that, I am curious for us to go a bit further into what you were just sharing, especially maybe we could start with this idea of the compounding buildup that occurs, because one thing that I notice with people that we work with is there's sometimes this assumption that if you haven't gone through really heavy trauma, then maybe you don't need the tools, or people will wonder like, what is it for, And I think it's important to recognize that no matter who you are and no matter what you've gone through, every single one of us experiences stress and worry and hard times and little tests that we go through in life, or big tests. And when you don't have tools and habits in place to process what you're coming up against in life, it builds up. And that's what you were saying there about that compounding, where we may not even know that something's even bothering us. And then all of a sudden, that one thing's happened, boom, another thing. And suddenly we're like, why do I feel so down? I should be happy. Like my life is so good on paper. Why am I feeling this way? And that's usually the moment where we're like, I feel so negative.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've noticed within myself is when I feel negative, I'm draining my own energy and I'm lowering my vibration, and I'm doing that. It's not how life is. Yes, there's that, but it's the meaning that I'm placing on things.
So how you're interpreting what's occurring.
Yeah. And that's huge, right? Because we know that the first 7 years of life, our subconscious mind forms the foundation of our current beliefs, perceptions, and responses based on what happened, how we responded, and what we made that mean. So two people can go through the exact same experience in life and have totally different viewpoints and perspectives and have a different relationship with how it impacted them. So it's not what's happening in life, it's how we're responding and what we're making it mean. Okay. That is the key.
So a little question for you, because I've seen the shift in you as the day has unfolded, as you allowed that release to happen. There was also a reframe. So you just described there, like two people can have the same thing happen and they'll have different perceptions. And then what about the fact that one person from one time of day to the next can go through a transformation and reframe to perceive the exact same circumstances in a completely different way. So what has shifted for you? Like, have you got any examples from today specifically of how your perception has changed?
Totally. So for me, it was a willingness to acknowledge how I was truly feeling, because when I felt negative this morning when I woke up, I could have easily bypassed that. I could have kept busy. I could have done a million different things to avoid, how I was feeling. And I could have bypassed it completely and got on with the day. But that negative self-talk and that inner feeling of, just focusing on what's wrong would have been playing in the background. And eventually it would have spilled on to the day and affected other areas of my life.
Right, like you could have been more reactive with me, with work stuff. Yeah. You could have been less patient with like emails, or less inspired to be creative.
And even filming this podcast, I might not have been in my flow.
I might have been like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So the key for me was not to bypass what I'm feeling with this fake positivity. It was about getting real. no, I am feeling negative right now, but what am I going to do about it? So I sat in meditation and I allowed myself to focus on the meaning that I was making and what was compounding in my life and fueling these feelings of negativity. So once I found that, then I was able to, feel my emotions, express it, and let it go, and have my own realizations through that process. So that was the key. It was giving myself permission to be with it. And in being with it, I transform it. I'm not trying to bypass it with positivity. I'm being real. I feel like shit. I'm focusing on what's going wrong. I feel negative. Acknowledging it, being real, and then giving myself that permission to move through it and come out the other side where I'm like, now I don't feel like that at all. Nothing's changed in my life. Everything's still the same. But guess what? My perception has shifted.
Yeah, that is so important for people to get, because what we resist persists. And when it comes to our relationship with our own emotions, we can be feeling resentful or tired or burdened. And instead of going into the feeling and sitting in it with meditation or going into a breathwork session or journaling about it or talking to someone if we need to, we can go into judging the feeling. And then in judging the feeling, what we don't realize is that we're actually making ourselves wrong. We're making the situation even more wrong. And we're adding to the experience of stress.
We're digging ourselves a negative hole and we're just going deeper and deeper into that loop.
And then on top of that, often when we're resisting and judging the experience of the emotions or discomfort, we then don't allow ourselves to feel it in a healthy way. So we end up repressing it or suppressing it or turning to a coping mechanism to Band-Aid over the top of it.
Yeah, that's really key what you said about the coping mechanisms. When people feel this sense of burden, then usually our response is to reach for something externally for this temporary sense of relief, but it is only temporary. And then if you're making choices that aren't fully in alignment with, your goals or who you want to be, then there can be this sense of shame or guilt for making that choice because it wasn't aligned. So you go from feeling burdened to temporary relief, then back to feeling burdened again because of your choices.
One of the things that we speak about a lot, right, with our clients is the process of going from past attachments into present moment distractions and then into future resistance. And what I see is that when it comes to what we resist and how that persists, if we experience something and then we move on from it, but we don't actually process it, those attachments remain. So it's like we could just gather baggage, in the backpack. We're moving through life and there's all of this accumulated junk from experiences that we haven't allowed ourselves to be complete with.
Yeah.
And that is those past attachments. And then you bring all that baggage into the present moment. You wonder why you feel negative. It's because there's all of this accumulated baggage you haven't let go of. And then instead of going into it to clear out the baggage, you go into distracting yourself. And these coping mechanisms, whether it be scrolling or shopping or eating or sex or whatever the thing may be, gossiping, there's so many different ways that we distract ourselves. And then again, when we have a disempowered relationship with what's happened and even the present moment where we're like, I can't allow myself to sit in the discomfort of what's true and real and arising for me, no wonder we resist the future because we're continually grappling with resistance and pain and aversion to what's been, what is, and what's coming. And we're living in a state of survival when if we were to be a bit more brave and actually face what happened and what's here now, we would feel more safe to step into an empowered future where we feel like, okay, I have got this and I can create and I know myself and I've got this. Like I'm going to turn my life into something beautiful.
Break this down because it sounds wonderful. But when you're
the reality.
Yeah, when you're in the thick of it, right? And you're feeling negative, there's a sense of righteousness, or I notice within myself, almost like I want to defend my limitation.
Totally.
And in doing that, what I'm really saying is I don't believe in change or possibilities in that moment. And I want things to stay the same, right? That's the signal that I'm consciously or unconsciously sending out to life.
Yeah. And a part of that is too that when we are identified with a really charged emotion or story,
and we have the evidence for it, like, which is key. Like, life is presenting me this series of challenges. So I have evidence for why life sucks,
and
for why things
therefore
are shit,
we
why things are so
often
challenging.
we then often will mistake our subjective perception for fact.
Mm.
And that's what I notice when I'm defensive, when I'm in that, like, I'm a victim. Don't you try to take this away from me. Don't try to tell me to be positive. You don't understand mindset.
Yeah, you don't
I
know
believe
how
it's
hard
facts.
it is. You don't know how hard it is, right?
Yeah.
We have that mindset, but we have to recognize in that moment that we are playing the victim. Now, we all do this.
Yeah.
But isn't it strange how we defend that position, even though we don't want to defend
We
it?
don't. We actually want to be free from it.
Yeah, we want to be free. We want to be liberated. We don't want to be negative, right? But there's this sense of like holding on to it in the moment. But what if we were to let it go? And
so let's talk about
how do
why
we let it go?
Also why we hold on to it, because there's some really important points there for people to understand. And then how do we let it go?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to me when I'm holding on to something, it's because I have an expectation around how life should be.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm not getting what I want, or life isn't the way that I want it to be, or real life challenges happen, then I feel justified in taking my position of things aren't fair, things aren't working out, things shouldn't be this way. But in that justification, I am attached to an outcome that isn't based in reality, because life is just happening and everything else is a story.
Does anyone else go through that where you just have a tantrum sometimes?
Yeah.
Because you've adopted a story about how life should be and you're suffering as a result of your own expectations.
And not just expectations, sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
And I say this because I can witness it in myself. When I feel a sense of entitlement around how life should be, and then I've fallen into that meaning making, and I'm overlaying, what I want into the present moment, and I'm creating suffering because that's not the way it is, then I have to recognize that I have become the problem. It's not life. Life is always reorganizing. Life will always, bring us challenges and tests and things that we grow through. That's a part of the human experience. But how I respond to those specific things is on me.
This brings up for me a saving grace in my life, which is my relationship with divine timing and divine will.
Yes.
Because when we're identified with our own expectations that are literally made up stories that we've created ourselves, we are not living by divine timing. We're living by our own personal overlay.
Ego and programming.
Right. And like you've touched on, you cannot fathom what your life could be, what life has in store for you, and you cannot control everything. There are just factually things that you cannot control. And if you overlay your own expectations onto life in areas that you have no control over, you're going to perpetuate your own suffering.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that you need to have zero care at all about how life goes and become really apathetic and detached and like numb to it all and like, oh, well, whatever, life's just going to happen. You can still have an intention and be in co-creation. But for me, living in alignment with divine will and divine timing is where I step out of the way with those expectations and go, you know what? If I try to force this with my own ideas, I'm actually playing small because I believe that the universe, God, source, has a higher plan for my life than I can even imagine. And in the process of thinking that I know what's best, not only do I get frustrated and negative because it's not happening how I want it to be,
we're trying to control it.
I also, as well, feel less connected to the divine, which is another layer of suffering.
Yeah.
So I think that's been really key for me in actually transforming my own addiction to negative thinking and making things wrong and being overly controlling is like, babe, hand it over. Like, you don't know what's best for you. Relax.
Yeah.
Relax the force.
Well, a part of knowing that you are the architect of your own personal reality and you can co-create your dreams and desires into reality, there's things that you have control over and there's things that you don't have control over. So no amount of worry around those things that you can't control is going to serve you. It's only going to drain your energy and lower your vibration and disconnect you from the magic and joy in the present moment and all of your blessings right here, right now. So like you said, that's a process of surrendering those things over to a higher power, knowing you are divinely guided, and then focusing on what you can control.
Okay, so I have a question for you on this. Let's get like a little bit more granular, specific.
Yeah.
We've both had these experiences before where we're trying to be in that co-creative state and we're like, okay, God, source, show me where to go, bless up my life, let's do this, let's manifest together. And then it feels like it's not happening.
Yeah.
And you start to feel sorry for yourself.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, let's ground it in and make it really practical.
So what happens? What do we do?
What have I noticed within myself? I've noticed when life slows down and there's obstacles and challenges, there's a few different things that's happening. One, I'm not keeping my word.
Tell me more.
I'm not keeping my promises to myself. I'm saying that, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then that time comes and I'm not showing up fully. So I'm not showing up and I'm not fully doing my part to the capacity that I know that I'm capable of doing whatever it is that I know that I should be doing.
So
right?
an
We all have
example
those
of that,
things.
could that be like you haven't been keeping up with a deep meditation practice or haven't been taking action on something that you were guided to do?
Yeah, for me, it's always action-based things. So whether that's my workouts and my nutrition, my meditation, or my daily practices, if I'm not showing up to my full capacity, then how should I expect life to show up to its full capacity to support me? If I'm not willing to support myself through the process of life,
life is matching us.
Exactly. Life is mirroring back to us where we're at and vibrationally what we're signaling out. So keeping your promises to yourself is one of those huge things to reflect on and check in. Have you been keeping your promises to yourself?
And have you been acting on your guidance? That's another part of it.
Acting on your own inner knowing or inner feeling or, the subtle sense of seeing or hearing. We all have a different relationship to our inner guidance and our intuition, but have you been taking action on what you know you should be doing? So that's a
good one.
Part of the conversation for me. Then it's also about where have I been placing my focus? Like if I've been putting all of my energy into the present moment of what's happening and I'm seeing through the lens of lack and separation and there's not enough, then I have to recognize that that's the viewpoint in which I'm perceiving reality. Like that's my mindset. That's where I'm at. Now I have the power to shift my state with the way I see reality through my self-talk, through a practice of pattern interference, by choosing again, is what I'm focusing on in my own mind true? And is it serving me? And if it's not, then why am I placing my energy and attention on this? Wouldn't it be better to place my energy and attention on what I want rather than what's going wrong?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because I think we can think that we're acting in alignment with divine will. We're acting in alignment with our guidance. We're doing all the things. And we can get into this mindset of deserving and entitlement where we're like, it should be happening by now. It should be working out for me. And we need to be really vigilant and honest with ourselves about the vibration that we're operating in. Because what I notice is that some days you can be doing the things, but if you're honest and you really check in, the vibe's off.
Yeah.
Or you're actually spiraling into assuming the worst and getting impatient, and it's getting muddled. Like you're no longer actually in a state of co-creation and surrender and living in alignment with the flow that is moving and wanting to move more through your life. You're going, yeah, I'm willing to co-create, but like only 30% or only 45%. And that little bit where you derail yourself compounds.
Yeah, and that might be
day by day it builds up.
That could be listening to your fears or self-doubt or that negative voice or resistance that comes in and might slow you down or stop you from taking consistent and aligned action on your goals or the things that you know that you should be doing. And if you're not doing your part, how can you expect the universe to do its part?
And the other part of this too that we see a lot with clients, I know it's been a big theme lately. I mean, like you said, we're working with some people who are going through some really hard things. And what I've witnessed is that the ones who do the best through the hard times are the ones who are looking for the lessons and willing to sit in the fire of whatever that initiation is bringing and go, show me why this is happening. It's happening for some reason. I mean, just the other day, shout out to Leah, one of our Awaken Breathwork facilitators. She posted that she'd had her nose broken. Like, that's so rough to have happen out of nowhere, and to be sitting in the question of how is this lesson showing up to serve me in some way?
Yeah, and sometimes we don't know, right? Like I've had 3 broken noses, so I know how like uncomfortable that is physically. Sometimes we don't know what the higher lesson is.
And how easy is it to go into feeling sorry for ourselves in those moments and just being like,
and we've got to ride through those waves. But if we can't see a higher purpose around something, can we accept it? Because in accepting it, then we can process our emotions and we can move forward.
Yeah. Another thing with that too, it's funny because if you're a little on the skeptical side, you might be like, well, maybe it's not a lesson. Like, are you just being too deep about it? What if this has just happened and it sucks and the negative feelings are justified? And I guess what I think of there is everything in life is dictated by the meaning that we make about it. And if you can find a way to turn something that's difficult into a gift, why wouldn't you do that? Spiritual beliefs aside, if you can find some value in an experience that's testing you and challenging, I think that's really wise to do.
What's that old saying? If life throws you lemons, make
turn it into lemonade. Yeah, like flip the script. Turn it into a gift, because I can guarantee that Leah, for example, with breaking her nose, if she chooses to turn that into a lesson and a blessing, her whole experience of recovery is going to be so different to if she just like sat at home and was like, oh, I'm embarrassed, like I don't look the same and I'm feeling sorry for myself and this sucks and why are things not flowing for me? That's a whole different timeline. And there's real power there in choosing your own narrative and making the meaning that you apply to your life experiences work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, 1, you might be living out of alignment with what you know you should be doing. Then 2, life might be reorganizing your reality. And then 3, like you said, you might be being tested. And, we're often tested in life. Challenges happen. That's a part of the human experience. But I think the key thing to what we've been speaking into is what you make those challenges mean and how you show up accordingly. And of course, we're going to go through those highs and lows. And just like I spoke about this morning, being in a funk and, moving through that. The key is like moving through it. You don't have to stay in that low vibrational state. Now, one of the things I see that happens all the time with people is when they're in that victim mentality, they want to have a pity party with other people and complain and bitch and judge. And in doing that, they actually get energy. But it's a way of playing small because they keep themselves stuck in that state and they affirm to themselves that, yes, it's true. Life is this way. And they have someone to bounce off that perception who's also in that lower vibrational state. And then you look at other people who might be doing things out in the world and then you judge them. You project your own limitations and pain and judgments onto other people because of your own unhappiness, because you feel like a victim, because you feel like life isn't working out the way you want it to. So you tear other people down. And that's a form of getting energy.
It is.
But it's a form of lower vibrational energy. When you can move into a state of really celebrating people and celebrating life. And if you could just try on the possibility, like if life isn't working out and you're not where you want to be and you're not living in alignment, you have the power to shift that. You have the power to get into alignment. You have the power to make different choices. If life is reorganizing your reality, then you have the power to shift your perception around your meaning making. Mm-hmm. You have the power to try on new possibilities, that life is always supporting you and the universe has your back and God doesn't miss. And you have the power to recognize when you're being tested and know that you are strong enough and courageous enough to move through that test and come out the other side stronger, more aligned and more equipped to be the person that you came here to be, which is all a mindset shift. Because I think oftentimes when life throws us lemons and we have to make it into lemonade, when we don't make it into lemonade and we sit in that suffering, it's because we feel like we're not capable, that we don't have what it takes, that it's too hard. We just give in, we throw in the towel. And first we do that within our own mind. And then we do it through not taking aligned action. And in doing that, we also move into the space where we kind of give up, right, on life. Mm. And many people live in that state of pessimism, negativity, where they've just given up. And I think that comes back to what you said around giving yourself a safe space to process your emotions.
Sometimes you just need to have a good cry and let the energy out. I cannot tell you how much healing I've received by creating space in my life to just cry when I need to cry or complain to a journal page rather than a person. Go
Talk
and write
about that.
Well, I think that there are healthy ways to release that don't perpetuate or spread negative energy.
Like just getting it all out on paper.
Write someone a letter. You don't need to give it to them. Get the words out that you've been holding on to inside. If there's situations in your life that are bothering you, instead of holding all of that baggage and resentment and pain and worry internally, write it out in a journal.
Purge it out.
So that you can let it go, so that you can acknowledge it, tell your brain and body, okay, here, I acknowledge it. I acknowledge fully how I feel. And then you can move on. What you don't acknowledge, it will just keep looping.
Yeah.
It's waiting for your attention. So we do need healthy outlets. We do need to have a good cry sometimes.
And not just a good cry, we also need to like move through frustration and anger and rage and allow ourselves to go there, because so many people don't feel safe to, process those emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is key.
When it comes to the personal development path as well, I think a lot of people can go really deep into that fixing mode and they want to have everything figured out and they want to be really positive. And we can start to judge and condemn low vibrational energy and negative emotions and do the whole spiritual bypassing thing, which is not what we're talking about. We're talking about meeting what is with full presence and alchemizing it into something that empowers you and supports you, and realizing that you do have the ability to transform your inner dialogue and what you make things mean.
Yep.
But if something is bothering you, you need to allow yourself the space to feel it. And that's healthy. And as human beings, we all go through the full spectrum of emotions. And so, for example, what you said about anger, there's been times where you've gotten out your boxing gloves and been like, you need to release this and get angry. And you don't let yourself get angry very often. So why don't you try it? And that's been scary for me. And I've had so much resistance to it. And my identity, or at least my idea of my own identity, will say, you're not an angry person. You don't do that. And then when I start to actually move my body and allow the energy to release somatically, I start to feel all the repressed pain that I've outcasted and exiled and been like, you're not allowed to be angry because that's not a part of your identity that you've created. And this is where we integrate all parts of ourselves. This is where we integrate our own shadows, the parts of ourselves that we've judged and shamed and rejected. And instead of being like, ugh, that's not me, I'm above that, awakening can be loving all parts of yourself and having a healthy space for them, which means, again, for example, if I have resentment or judgment toward a person, instead of going to that person and spewing out my own reactions and unresolved emotion, I could bring that pain to my practice.
Yeah, so one way we can ground that in and make it practical for all the listeners is journaling. So just writing down the things that are bothering you, getting them onto paper.
Write a list, brainstorm it out. It's so helpful.
Yeah, and then also write down all of your blessings, the things that you're grateful for and the things that you can appreciate in your life. Now, there's a practice called the appreciation rampage. So instead of just writing down a few things that you can appreciate in your life, what about walking around throughout your day and anchoring all of the things that you can appreciate, the things that you can see in your environment and nature, about your life, people in your life, really putting your attention and focus on that. And when you do that, you're inviting more beauty, more joy, more love, more appreciation into the present moment.
I'm so glad that you brought this up. Shout out to Esther Hicks, by the way, for the appreciation rampage.
Yep.
I love that we're starting to shift the direction here, because once you've created a safe space within yourself to be with the discomfort, the negative, the things that you're resisting, and you're radically honest, you then have the ability to turn it around. And when you touched on creating the list of anything that's bothering you, one of the things that I love to do so much is, after I create that list of what's bothering me, I will go in and create a plan and get really practical about it. And every single little thing that is annoying me in some way, I will write down one thing that I can do or a reframe on that thought. So for example, okay, I've got one. This is so trivial, and yet this can actually drain my energy. This morning I woke up, I knew that we wanted to do a podcast today to film, and I was like, oh no, my skin's breaking out. And immediately I went into
Focusing on what's
this
wrong.
focus on, oh, I'm embarrassed, I look bad, poor me, oh, why do I have this sensitivity to certain foods that makes me break out, blah, blah, blah. I was going there. And one way that I can, if I was to put that on the list of like, oh, I'm upset because I've got breakouts, I could then go and say, hey, Hella, how lucky are you that you're beautiful? Like you're attractive, you're good enough. And then I could say, okay, a practical thing that I could do is like, oh, I'm going to have a sauna later on, or I'm going to be more mindful of my food this week and not just carelessly eat things that I know are not good for me, like things that cause inflammation or whatever. So there's lots of different ways that we can approach our own empowerment and transform the things that feel blocked into openings and opportunities. And I think it's important to start small. I mean, I remember for such a long time with you and I, when we first got together, I felt so stuck in that victim consciousness, and you'd make suggestions to me about things that I could do to break out of it and like live a better life. And I'd be like, you don't understand. That's too hard. That's too much. I'm not ready, blah, blah, blah. Like there'd always be blocks and excuses because I'd get so overwhelmed and then I'd dig my heels in.
How many people can relate to that? I know I can, those times where you're not ready for change.
Yeah. We can really get in our own way when we're not ready or we don't yet see the light of what's possible. So we need to start with whatever we're ready for.
Yep.
Another example of that is I remember when you wanted me to get into exercise. This was, I think, like 17 years ago, right? Or 16 years ago, right when we first were getting together. You were really into running. And I was like, I don't run and I hate running. And you were like, just try it with me. And I was so in that victim mode that when we went running one time, I was so dramatic. I remember being like, it hurts, I'm wheezing. And I was like, something's wrong with me. And I remember we got back to the house and I was laying there and I was like, something's severely wrong with me. Why did you make me do this? And I was so in the complaint. But then, as time went on, I was like, okay, I'm starting to recognize the value in things like exercise, and maybe running's not for me, but maybe like Pilates is, and so over the years you can start to identify truth in things that people have been suggesting that you've been so resistant to accepting, and then adopt the changes at the level that you're ready for. And it might not be the full shebang thing, it might be a little something. Start there.
One of the key things that's helped me is to practice becoming the observer of my own thoughts. And I've done that through meditation. So just sitting in stillness, observing my thoughts. A lot of our thoughts are negative and a lot of our thoughts are repetitive. And it's like the negative thoughts hold more weight. So if you can become aware of your own thoughts, then you get to choose what you give your energy and attention and power to. And if you can do that in meditation, you can do it in daily life. And
You've been so good at teaching me about that, the power of adopting more positive self-talk.
Yeah, speaking life into yourself. So if you notice that you're running negative thoughts or disempowering stories and you catch yourself in the moment, that's the time to bring in that pattern interruption by questioning, is this true? And does it serve me? And if it doesn't serve you, and if it's not true, if it's not a fact, if it's just a perception, then you have the ability to shift that in the moment by speaking life into yourself. Now, some people resonate with affirmations and some people don't, but we can each speak life into us. There's things that you need to hear in that moment, and there's things that your inner child needs to hear. There's things that need to be said to you in the moment that maybe you never had growing up. And maybe in this moment, it's an opportunity to self-parent yourself and to give yourself what you need and meet yourself with love and compassion and kindness and coach yourself through that process. And I've really had to do that for myself in a big way because negative self-talk was one of those things that I really, really struggled with.
Yeah, it's so common. If you're listening right now, I hope that you are taking this on, that you deserve to speak to yourself kindly. And something that blows my mind is that I think in our society, it's become normal to be really self-critical. And just because something is a cultural norm does not mean it's a reflection of health.
Let's be clear, not self-critical, to be really judgmental, especially if we look at the internet. People are so quick to judge, having no idea about what someone's had to overcome to get where they are, no idea of what they're navigating in their life or how they feel about themselves. We're so quick to just shut things down, to look at the negative and complain or to project our own limitations onto others.
And really take things at face value. I feel like humans can be very superficial and quick to assume, for example, okay, they're attractive or they've got money or they've got a relationship or they've got this great job, therefore they must have zero suffering. That is so out of touch with reality.
Yeah.
As human beings, every one of us has challenges and we all feel. And so it doesn't really matter what you've got going on. I mean, we've worked with plenty of the most attractive, successful, wealthy, creative, popular, whatever people, and everyone experiences pain. And what we all have control over, if we choose to, that's the key point, is how judgmental versus how loving and compassionate we are, both towards ourselves and also other people.
Yeah, and we've also worked with people that have had some serious trauma and addictions and real life struggles, who are stuck in a negative place and they've been extremely stuck. And we've helped them to move through that. And the way we've done it is to meet them exactly where they are and take away all judgment of their process and create a safe space where they can acknowledge how they're feeling and start to express it. And by expressing it, then they start to process it and they start to release it. And it's the body that holds on to stress and unexpressed emotions and trauma. So if we can acknowledge it on the level of the body, not just the mind, and create that safe space where we can start to process things somatically, then we begin to liberate ourselves, set ourselves free from that suffering.
Yeah, your attention is your power. What you focus on is expanding, and you are giving it power whenever you focus on it. And what I am just reflecting on right now as we speak about this is we're all giving power to something. What are you giving power to?
And another word for power is energy.
Right. What are you giving energy to? And what you're giving energy to can be giving you energy back.
Or it can be draining your energy.
Yes.
So are you draining your own energy with the way you think about yourself, about others, and about life? And if you are, recognize that you have become a part of the problem, but you are also the solution. And the solution is changing your mindset and giving yourself a safe space to acknowledge how you're feeling and then begin to move those emotions, right? Emotions are just energy and motion. They want to be felt.
Exactly. And then you start stacking those wins, little bite-sized actions that you take every day to stack wins. And you start becoming more aware of your own thinking, the stories that you're telling yourself about life,
the meaning you're making,
the meaning you're making about what's happening, what you tell yourself when you look in the mirror, what you tell yourself about what's possible for you in your life. All of this is adding up every day. And I'll tell you that when I'm at my worst, I'm doing all of those things in a way that's draining my energy and spiraling me downward. Like I'm not doing the habits that make me feel optimal. I'm doing the habits that at first it seems fine. I'm like, oh, I can get away with a little ice cream treat here, a little takeaway pizza here.
Compound
and suddenly
effect.
A week later, I'm like, why do I feel so bad? Or it could be I'm suddenly a little more critical of myself, or suddenly I'm a little more judgy and gossipy and I allow it to go on a little too long. And then all of a sudden I'm in the hole. And so that's one version of life. And then the other version of life that we can actually pivot to in an instant, like you can change your direction right now, draw a line in the sand and go, okay, what's a win that I can get in this next hour? What's some new thoughts that I can start to wire into my brain? And what could I start to reinforce in my beliefs that will help me in propelling toward everything that I want?
Yeah, and if you're not ready to do that, then just get out a piece of paper and start writing down everything in your life that is negative and wrong. Get it out of your mind and body and put it onto paper.
Get it out.
Yeah, get it out.
Yeah, and then get creative.
Yeah.
Really inviting you right now to give yourself a chance to get creative.
One way I get creative is back to that appreciation rampage. Like I'll literally go outside, walking out in nature in my environment, and I'll start looking at all the things around me. Like that's a beautiful house. oh, that's a nice car. That's some beautiful flowers. Like I can appreciate all these things.
Look at the sky, all
Look
of
at
the
the
different colors.
sky.
Oh, wow, there's a butterfly.
Yeah, whatever it is, I just start appreciating
How
it.
great is it that I have legs to walk? I'm so
And
grateful for my toes.
exactly. And less of a mental thing, I'm doing it through feeling. Like I am actually grateful for these things. Like life wouldn't be the same without these things. I'm really, truly grateful.
We got to zoom out sometimes and realize what we've been taking for granted.
Yeah. And that helps me. And it's simple and it's easy and anyone can do it. All of these things that we've been speaking about are free, right?
Yeah.
You just have to get out of your own way and show up for yourself. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're willing to get out of your own way, show up for yourself and do the work, then you're sending a clear signal to life, the universe, and a higher power that you're doing your part. And when you do your part, then the universe can get to work and do its part.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of creating your vision into reality.
I feel like a whole new level of this that you and I are really working on right now in our life is while we can be in a state of creating and putting our energy deposits every day into building a beautiful future, there's also a real power in falling more in love with the present moment
Yes.
and not needing more,
And even if
but
it's
being
not
like,
where you
how
want to
can
be.
this be the best right here?
Yeah. And even though it might not be exactly where you want to be, can you shift your attention to focus on what is working and what you can appreciate and what you are truly grateful for? Because I guarantee there's things in your life that you can appreciate that when you have been focusing on what's wrong, or what's not working out, then you miss those things.
Life is happening now.
Yeah.
We can get so caught up in thinking it should be another way or it should
Mm.
be like so-and-so's life or we should look like them or have the reality that they have, whatever the thing is. But in all of that, we're missing the gift of right here and right now.
Mm.
And it's this. This is the realness. This is the moment. There's so much to be grateful for here and now. And the most truly wise and strategic thing that you can do to build a better future is actually optimize your present moment.
Yeah.
Like go all in on making your life beautiful today, tomorrow, this week, and you will find that your energy increases and you have more ideas available to you and your relationships improve. And that is setting the foundation for all the goodness to come. You don't lose anything by enjoying the now if you're truly in alignment. I think the only way that we can sabotage the creation of an ideal future is if we're making short-term gratification-based choices that give us like a quick boost, but are actually harmful. But if you're doing things that are nourishing and aligned with well-being, and you're soaking it up and living your best life, then you're in alignment and you're winning in the truest sense. I think anyone who gets too caught up and attached to some future horizon out here, like one day it's all going to be great, is missing the point. It's here.
It's here right now. So as we wrap up this conversation, I want to touch on something you said at the beginning of this conversation. You said a lot of the ways that we disconnect from being able to enjoy the present moment as our past attachments, our present distractions, and our future resistance. So for the listeners at home, when you notice yourself focusing on past attachments, meaning the things that you've been through that you haven't had an opportunity to process yet, and then we have our present distractions, and there's a million of those happening all the time, right? For each and every single one of us. But can we bring our focus back to the present moment? And then we have our future resistance, the things that haven't happened yet, but we might worry about or mentally rehearse these worst case scenarios and be in a state of fear. All of that's taking us out of the present moment. It's taking us out of really being able to enjoy the here and now. And like you said, find more beauty and presence and love in this moment. And I really want to remind every single one of you tuning into this that your present moment, no matter if it's lovely and beautiful and you are where you want to be, or if life really sucks right now and you're going through it, your present moment doesn't define where you're going, what you're creating, and who you're becoming.
It actually is completely separate. Your past is completely separate from your future.
Yep. And you have the power to show up and create these positive changes by, one, focusing on how you're feeling, giving yourself a safe space to feel your emotions. Two, looking at your thoughts. And if your thoughts are negative and focused on what's wrong, you have the power to shift your thoughts. And three, taking aligned action on the things that you know you need to be doing, keeping your promises to yourself and keeping your word.
Yes, I love that. And the last things that I want to add to this conversation are the power of mirror work, what you speak into yourself in the mirror. So
Words
when
of
you
spells.
get up in the morning, when you brush your teeth, when you're getting ready, practice affirming kind things about yourself.
Speaking life into yourself.
And I honestly love to make it a game, be playful with it. And when I catch myself saying something critical or negative, just say clear, clear, delete, and then replace it with a positive thought. Try it. See
That
how
reminds
it feels.
I close down the tabs. So just like if I have tabs open on my computer, the computer can become a little bit stressed out. It can heat up. There's too much going on. Just like my mind and body can do the same. So I close down those tabs. If I'm thinking about negative things or things that don't serve me or what's going wrong, close that tab.
Exit. On to the next.
See ya.
Oh, I love that. There's so much more that I know we'll unpack on this topic in future episodes. I hope that everyone has found this helpful so far. And the last little thing that I'll share aside from mirror work is, of course, you all know the Awaken Breathwork app is such a game changer. And we've got so many classes in the library that you can tune into on demand that can support you in shifting out of a funk, tapping into more self-love, more positivity, more inspiration and creativity. The list goes on. That's exactly what we're passionate about and why we created the app. So if you haven't yet checked it out, please do. Highly recommend.
Get a 7-day free trial on our website, awaken.com. Let's go.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Big, big love. Make sure that you follow, subscribe, and if you feel like it, we would so appreciate it if you share the episode.
Big love.
See you in the next one.